Hello, good morning, and today I'd like to address the topic of everything in moderation. So the idea that if we eat a balanced diet, that this is enough, and why do we need to go to the extremes of being vegan? So since in the 4 years or 5 years since I've been vegan, the most common thing that people say to me is that, "Oh, Alan, I could never do that. I could never go at what you're doing because I just like the taste so much." After the taste argument, the next most common argument that I hear is that they people say to me that I'm actually what I've done is a very extreme thing, and that they believe in balance, everything in moderation. That's the motto. And I understand this argument very well indeed. Why? Because it's the same argument that I used to use. I remember only a few years ago, I went, so a couple of years before I made the change to a plant-based diet, I went on a ferry from here to Gran Canaria, and I was with a woman that we'd recently met as part of the event that we were going to, and she told me at the time that she was on a vegan diet, and that she didn't eat any animal products or animal secretions, so dairy basically. And I remember saying to her that I regarded that as being very extreme, and that why couldn't she just eat a balanced diet? She was thankfully very, very gentle with me. She didn't try to tell me anything. She just smiled at me knowingly, and I probably didn't think anything more about it. The thing was, in my mind at the time, I was eating a balanced diet. Now, it's almost laughable to think what that would have been. I used to have a continental breakfast, so usually included some meat, definitely cheese, so meat and dairy for breakfast. Lunch was always something with meat, so chicken sandwich, tuna sandwich, a pork, or something, always something with meat. And of course, evening meal, exactly the same, always something with meat and dairy. So in my mind, this was a balanced diet, but in actual fact, I'd eaten meat and dairy for breakfast, meat and dairy for lunch, and meat and dairy for evening meal. And I don't think that I'm a lot, or I was a lot different than most people are today. I think this is a normal thing, and for some reason, I think we get confused between what's really a balanced diet and what's a normal diet. So what I was eating was a normal diet, so basically what everybody else was doing, but it was actually a long way, a lot far removed from being a balanced diet. I used to think that this woman was crazy because you needed to drink milk for strong bones. You needed to eat meat for the protein that's in it. If you don't eat meat, where are you going to get your protein? And you also need to eat meat for all the nutrition that's in there. So in my mind, I was almost an expert on nutrition. The truth was, I was very, very ignorant indeed. I had absolutely no idea, and I was just repeating the nonsense that had been told to me for years and years on the television, in advertising. Yeah. And it turns out that, in actual fact, thinking back to it, I was I was the one on the extreme diet, and she was the one on a balanced diet. So, how things change. Um, I've since found out, of course, that milk isn't good for your bones. It's actually acidic, and the countries with the highest amounts of milk consumption are also the countries with the highest amounts, the highest levels of osteoporosis. That's the disease where your bones basically get brittle and fracture. I've since found out that meat isn't particularly healthy. In fact, it's probably the leading cause of heart disease. You don't need meat to get your protein. I've actually found out that there's protein in almost all foods, and there's more than enough protein in plants for everybody to live a very healthy, protein-rich life. So that was another lie that I believed. And what I've also found out since was that my thinking back to my balanced diet was that it was completely lacking in fiber. I've since found out, and I've obviously noticed, that when you go and switch to a plant-based vegan diet, you get a lot more fiber, which is good for your digestion. And it's also really good for your immune system, because the bacteria in your gut feed on the fiber, and this strengthens the immune system. So fiber is really good, and it's actually something that people on a normal diet are highly lacking. So highly recommend going to a plant-based vegan diet for all the fiber you're going to get. We have to remember that when we eat meat and dairy, so when we go out and buy meat or dairy product, that we're fueling demand for them. So we're saying we want more of this, which means there's a victim involved. So regardless of how little or how much we buy, no, that's not true, obviously. Regardless of whether we buy a lot or a little, there's still a victim involved. So the animal doesn't really care. The one that has to produce the milk, that has to be exploited and eventually die, that animal doesn't care whether your diet is balanced or not. All the animal wants to do is to live and be free. The Amazon rainforest doesn't care if you are living in moderation and eating a balanced diet or not. The Amazon rainforest is the lungs of the earth and wants to stay intact. So, just a little bit. So surely, is it okay then, for instance, to just chop down the Amazon rainforest in moderation? No. Is it okay to feed antibiotics to animals in moderation? No, because we're still going to reach a point where we become resistant. So that every time we feed antibiotics to animals, we're increasing antibiotic resistance for the animals, but eventually for us as well. So these are crazy things that all go on in the name of producing meat and dairy. So if you're thinking that you're on a balanced diet, or that you're everything in moderation, then please think about exactly what you are eating. Maybe you're like I was, that you don't even realize that you were eating meat and dairy all the time. Remember, meat and dairy is in chocolate, it's in most cakes, it's in biscuits. Dairy is in so many products. So if you think that you're on a moderate, balanced diet, please think about what you're eating, and maybe it's not so balanced and not so moderate after all. The only ethical diet is a diet based completely on plants. It's kind to your body, it's kind to the planet, it's kind to the animals, and there are no victims involved, or let's say there are far fewer victims involved. Not only that, going on a plant-based vegan diet is not about giving things up. It's about discovering this whole new world of products that you can eat. I had no idea that there were so many out there, and as I've said in a few videos, my diet now is far richer than it ever was before. And now I don't need to think about moderation, because the default by being on a plant-based diet is that you are eating a balanced, ethical diet that is certainly healthy and good for everybody, the planet and the animals. So I hope all this has made sense, and I look forward to coming again tomorrow with another topic. Bye bye.